I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. In the wake of this week's John Jay Report, we'll look at how the Brooklyn Diocese works with victims and survivors of sexual abuse.
Any person who has been abused by a minister of the gospel can report their allegation to the 800 number. Once that comes in, that's directly faxed to me, to the bishop, and the respective district attorney's office.
Plus, we go into the deep to talk about the now blessed John Paul II.
I was able to go to the Vatican, and I had this morning mass with him. And that was a moving experience because you could be there during the time he had his meditation, which was obviously deep in prayer.
And is it the end of the world as we know it? Some people say Saturday is Judgment Day.
And you're convinced, you're absolutely convinced.
Yes, because the Bible guarantees it.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We've spent most of our time this week talking about the John Jay College Report on Sexual Abuse by Catholic Clergy. The study, widely regarded as groundbreaking, looked at the causes of abuse and what the church has been doing and must improve upon to prevent another large-scale abuse scandal in the future. We've been getting reaction from the Diocese of Brooklyn and around the country, and we looked at how the diocese teams with agencies like the Safe Environment Office and the Kings County District Attorney to combat abuse. Today, though, we turn our attention to the victims and survivors of sexual abuse by clergy. Where do they go to report an allegation or to get help dealing with their situation? Well, to find out, I spoke with Sister Ellen Patricia Finn, the Diocesan Assistance Coordinator, and Dr. Joanne Heaney Hunter, a member of the Diocesan Review Board. Ladies, thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. We're glad to be here.
Well, Sister, let me ask you this first question here, because it'll probably play right into, Doctor, what you're going to have to say as well. Just want to get an idea about the jobs that each of you do with the diocese when as it regards to sexual abuse.
Okay. Well, in 2002, when the bishops of the United States presented us all with the charter and the norms, which were again revised in 2005, they created positions that would ensure the safety of all of our children in the diocese. And so the victim assistant coordinator position, every diocese in the country has a person like myself. And our main role is really to reach out to the victim in a pastoral manner and do whatever we can to help them on their journey toward healing and wholeness.
Sure, sure. And Doctor, where does your position sort of come in?
I'm on the Diocesan Review Board, and the way our process works, one of the things that I find so wonderful about what we do here in Brooklyn is that we have a consistent process. We have an 800 number, people call the number and they can present their information. The call goes directly to Sister Ellen, and it also goes to...
Well, with our bishop was very emphatic when he came to our diocese that he wanted all the reports to be made to a general reporting line.
Sure.
And so he instituted the 800 number, which I'm sure you will have on the screen. Yes. And any person who has been abused by a minister of the gospel, be that a priest, a deacon, or any other church personnel, can report their allegation to the 800 number. Once that comes in, that's directly faxed to me, to the bishop, and the respective district attorney's office.
Sure.
And then I follow up, and everyone who makes a call to that line is responded to within 24 hours.
Sure. And then at what point does it go to the review board then?
I will forward all allegations that come in to the chairperson of the review board.
And that will be immediately after?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the chairperson forwards the information to us, and we then are given information about which cases we will be looking at in which order. And so every case is given tremendous attention, and we make sure that every person involved has a fair process. It's a consistent process. We have a very dedicated review board. We have an independent investigator, someone with years of sex crimes experience, someone who will investigate a case very thoroughly, so that every victim has a sense that their case is being looked at carefully, and that every accuser knows that his case is being looked at fairly.
Sure.
It's really a process of high integrity.
And this is all separate from, of course, what the work that the DA's office is doing at this point. So
yes.
when the call comes in to that 800 number, then you will send the complaint directly to the DA's office as well as to the review board, and then they'll do their work, you'll do your work.
That's right.
Correct.
Sometimes, though, a case does not fall within the statute of limitations.
Sure.
So there wouldn't be a case with the DA. But even if something is not falling within the statute of limitations, the review board will still investigate it to make sure that all persons are being treated fairly.
Sure.
Joanne makes an excellent point there, that we have an outstanding review board, and the composition of the review board includes people like Joanne, other people from law enforcement, from psychology, from medicine, all types of backgrounds, social work, that really make every effort to be sure that the person who is presenting an allegation is heard. But we also, with high integrity, do the same kind of due diligence that none of our brother priests would be wrongfully accused.
Sure. Is there any way to know how many of these calls or complaints have come in throughout the time that that this hotline has been around, or that the Diocesan Review Board has been around?
I think it's important. You know, we can talk about numbers,
Sure.
but I think it's really important to keep focusing on the fact that every single case is treated as if it's the only one, as if it's the most important case, because it is to the person who's suffering. And I think that that's what we always have to remember, that every single case is absolutely important to the Church in the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Sure, and it's very interesting to me because as we've been, with the John Jay report, of course, came out earlier this week, this latest report, and it's there's always this perception that, oh, the Church isn't doing enough, the Church isn't doing anything, some people would say, and they're sweeping this under the rug and all of that. But this sort of, to me anyway, flies in the face of that.
Absolutely. It's the Church, and the Church in Brooklyn and Queens has done, since the very beginning, has done absolutely outstanding work. Bishop DiMarzio has gone the extra mile in making sure that cases are, it's not just cases, it's people, that people are treated fairly.
Part of that, we have a group of lay people who have worked with me on this. We have what's referred to as a healing intervention team. And the intervention team will help us when a priest who is accused and there's been some substance to the allegation and the priest is removed and placed on administrative leave, the intervention team will go to the parish and work with the parish staff, the parishioners, and help the general faithful come to some kind of, listen to them, because their pain is very great at that moment as well.
Sure.
So this diocese really has done a rather outstanding job in ministering to all of those who have made allegations. I could safely say that any good number of, on any day, I have a number of people that will call me, people who are on the journey toward healing and wholeness, but that journey is ever so long, given the fact that all abuse is horrific. But when a person is abused by a minister of the gospel, and that abuse is done in the name of God, there's a longer road to walk with the individual.
Absolutely. Well, it is a tough road, but we thank you so much for both coming in and talking about your work to kind of help that along, and we really, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much, Sister Ellen Patricia Finn, and also Dr. Joanne Heaney Hunter. We really appreciate your time very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks.
And to report any form of sexual abuse by a priest or a deacon or other church official, call the Diocese of Brooklyn's Victims Assistance Hotline. The number's on your screen now. It's 888-634-4499. You can also find that number and more information over on our blog. Just go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave. Well, stay with us. There's much more Currents coming up. A new statue of John Paul II is causing quite a stir at the Vatican. That story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, you've seen the billboards. Some people think the world will end tomorrow. We'll have a look at their claims. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, there was more religious unrest in Egypt this week as Christians and Muslims clashed at a church police were reopening Thursday. Reports say a group of Christians accompanied the authorities to the church when a group of as many as 1,000 radical Muslims tried to block the way. The groups began throwing stones at each other, but police were able to defuse the situation. The Egyptian government reopened that church and 2 others in response to Christian demonstrators who've been holding a sit-in along the Nile River for more than a week. Well, meantime, religious leaders are responding, many of them positively, to President Obama's speech on the Middle East. Thursday in Washington, the president said all faiths must be respected in the region, and he called for bridges to be built among them. Imam Mohammed Majid, the president of the Islamic Society of North America, told the Huffington Post, quote, "It was very important for the president to call for the respect of religious minorities who are not Muslim." Majid said he would like to see the Muslim community act on that call. Jewish leaders, though, had mixed reactions to Obama's call for a return to pre-1967 borders between Israel and Palestine. Some praised the president's willingness to help change the current situation. Others, though, said his plan could not work without major religious and cultural reforms in the Arab world. Well, Queen Elizabeth II left Ireland today at the end of her bridge-building trip to the majority Catholic country. Reports say the visit was widely seen as a success. But now Catholic cardinals are joining in the call for Britain to do away with the law banning Catholics from ascending to the throne. Scottish Cardinal Keith Patrick O'Brien told the BBC the law fueled anti-Catholic sentiment in the UK. Australian Cardinal George Pell told Catholic News Agency that changing the law would be welcomed in that British Commonwealth. The law was passed back in 1701 to prevent descendants of King James II, who was Catholic, from ascending to the throne. Elsewhere in Europe, a man set a priest on fire during a mass at a church in Lithuania on Thursday. Details are sketchy, but reports say a man, identified only by the initials JD, sprayed the priest with a flammable liquid and then set him on fire. Parishioners helped the priest extinguish the flames, but not before he suffered some facial burns. Police say they have no motive for the incident. JD could face up to 10 years in jail if he's convicted. Well, in the Philippines, a boxer turned congressman is voicing his support for banning condoms. Reports say Manny Pacquiao is joining with the Catholic Church in opposing a bill that would mandate government support for contraceptives. Pacquiao says using condoms is sinful, and he told USA Today that, quote, "God said, go out and multiply." He did not say just have 2 or 3 kids. Well, a new statue of Blessed Pope John Paul II in Rome is drawing harsh criticism from the Vatican. Officials unveiled the modernist statue of the late pontiff this week in honor of John Paul's 91st birthday. See it there. It's a bronze statue called Conversations. It weighs 4 tons. It's nearly 20 feet tall. It's supposed to depict John Paul with outstretched arms, welcoming everyone into one of the busiest squares in Rome. But the Vatican newspaper, the Roman Observer, said today that the statue gives the impression that a bomb hit the square. The paper also said the sculpture resembles a sentry box topped by the head of a pope, which comes off too roundish. The mayor of Rome told reporters he would take public opinion into consideration when deciding whether to remove the statue. Well, back here in New York, there was no controversy at all last night as the Brooklyn Diocese recognized some very important leaders. Each year, the Pastoral Institute commissions new lay pastoral leaders who've completed a 3-year training program. Our cameras were in Douglaston for this year's ceremony.
Tonight we celebrated the commissioning of the class of 2011 in the lay ministry program. It's a culmination of 3 years of theological studies, pastoral formation, spiritual formation, and human formation. In addition to their parish responsibilities, which don't ever seem to dwindle, they took on this program, and they deserve all the credit in the world.
It's going to continue to help me in the teaching of the confirmation classes, but I'm also the team leader for the vocation committee in my parish. I also am a lector, and I'm also the parish council. We're about ready to merge again, so I'm on that little committee. So it'll help me to stay balanced and to always be focused on what God's will is for us, His overall will. Because if we understand the overall will, then the little things we can always turn in and face it when we have little difficulties.
Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens commission you as pastoral leaders for service in our parishes and our agencies.
The word community comes to my mind. I've been involved in my parish for a number of years as a CYO coach, as a religious ed teacher. Just the foundation of increasing the knowledge of my faith is, I think, primarily what I'm gaining out of the program more than anything. And that education will constantly continue, as we know.
I only have God to thank in this program and the encouragement of all in my parish and my classmates. Forget that. The people you meet here, it's a blessing how they're so hungry to also bring that faith out to others. So I hope that this brings a lot of people into understanding our faith.
And it was an award ceremony of a bit of a different sort in Manhattan last night. The nonprofit group The Christophers handed out awards for TV shows, films, and books that affirm what they call the highest values of the human spirit. They handed out 17 Christopher Awards during the 62nd annual ceremony, and our cameras were there.
Here we are then with the Christopher Awards, giving us an opportunity to recognize those who have the courage and the vision to write and tell stories and make films about that which is the best that society has to offer.
We were founded in 1945 by Father James Keller. He thought there was too much complaining about what was wrong with the world and that people of faith needed to start acting, take the initiative themselves to make things better.
He applied that philosophy to the media as well and created the Christopher Awards to celebrate books, films, and TV programs that affirm the highest values of the human spirit. We're happy to continue that tradition tonight.
The book I'm getting honored for is The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything. It's a play on the idea that Jesuit spirituality is finding God in all things, but a friend of mine said if you call it The Jesuit Guide to Everything, people might think you're a little too arrogant, so I put in the almost just to make sure people know it was a joke.
I found this story about this Amish community who forgave a killer who went into a schoolroom and shot and killed a lot of their girls that were there. I don't know if I could act the way they did, but they sure set an example for us.
It's about two brothers in search for the meaning of life, to ask those who are less fortunate, homeless people in New York City, people in Peru, an orphanage, ask the young kids, what is the meaning of life to them? Why do they wake up in the morning?
When Father Michael died on 9/11, my family was devastated, and we didn't really know where to go from there. It was then that we decided to turn our devastation and grief into something beautiful to remember his life. It's in the faces of the homeless men and women that I've encountered on the streets of New York that I find the greatest reward.
Shannon and the others who are honored tonight are all the gift of being a Christopher, a Christ bearer, lighting a candle rather than cursing the darkness. The deepest message that life needs today in the challenges of our world and our globe.
Stay with us, there's much more currents ahead. When we return, Pope John Paul II is now blessed, and Bishop DiMarzio joins us to talk about Brooklyn's upcoming massive celebration.
We wanted an opportunity as a diocese to recognize this great event and to pray for his canonization.
Welcome back. Well, it may feel like a long time ago, but it hasn't even been 3 weeks since people gathered in Rome as Pope Benedict XVI moved his predecessor, John Paul II, one step closer to sainthood. The hugely popular late pontiff is now known as Blessed John Paul, allowing him to be publicly venerated. Well, Italian authorities estimated that over 1 million pilgrims crowded into St. Peter's Square to take part in the historic beatification Mass. But the Vatican was not the only place where you could find people celebrating this historic moment. Brooklyn is home to a sizable Polish community, and the Catholic community here also celebrated Blessed John Paul II, a favorite son of Poland. But you don't have to be Polish to love Blessed John Paul or have a devotion to him. He was the people's pope in every sense of the word, and I had a chance to go into the deep with Bishop DiMarzio to discuss the life and times of the beloved pontiff. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks so much for being here again. We appreciate it very much. Talking today about the beatification of John Paul II. It was a beautiful day here. It was a beautiful day in Rome for the beatification. Take us a little bit back to that day and talk about your experience watching it. I understand you were still here in New York.
Yes, I was here. I got up to see it live on TV, and it was a great event. Obviously, the crowds added to the excitement, and the homily of Pope Benedict was very, very, very good. I mean, I thought that was set the tone for what it really was about. I guess everyone knew this man was a holy man. Unfortunately, people today think that saints are perfect people. Well, that's not true. The saints are people who strive for being perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. And I think clearly the world knew that was the life of John Paul II. And that's where the recognition comes. And again, the miracle that was attributed to his intercession was important, and we hope that there will be more miracles so that he can be declared a saint fully as canonized. It was a time when we remembered his life, which was a wonderful one, the personal recollections, and it was a wonderful day.
Yeah. Well, and some people, might say, well, this has been a really quick process because, of course, Pope Benedict waiving that 5-year window that they usually have after someone's death before the process can begin. What do you say to people who might say, wait, hold on, this is too quick?
Well, I think the sense of the people was that it's not too quick. I don't think there's too many people saying, well, it was too quick.
So we'll say maybe it's not quick enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right, exactly. So, again, people have their opinions, but I don't think it was, too rushed. It was, you do have a verified miracle, and that should be some of the proof that this was not rushed.
Sure. Do you have any personal experiences with John Paul that you could share?
Well, a couple. One day I was Bishop of Camden. I was able to go to the Vatican, and I had this morning Mass with him. And that was a moving experience because you could be there during the time he had his meditation, which was obviously deep in prayer. And I was the only bishop there that day, so I was able to concelebrate right next to him in his chapel, and I have a wonderful photograph of that. That's a great thing. And then also the various limited visits. When the first one I did here as Bishop of Brooklyn, he was very much debilitated at that point, but he still, forced himself to have that 15-minute interview with each bishop. He wasn't able to speak very much. He just would ask a question, a very short question, and ask you to respond to it. So you could see the pain that he was undergoing, and yet his devotion to his responsibility as universal pastor. So they were kind of the moving events, I could say, that really was up close with him and alone with him. So it was really, they were very, very moving, memorable times.
Well, this, of course, is something that's very big as well for Polish Catholics, obviously.
Sure.
With John Paul's papacy really being historic and being the first pope, not from Italy, I guess, in some 400 years before he was elected. Talk about the importance of John Paul to the Polish people.
Well, I think for the Polish people, after the suffering of the last century they went through, to have a Polish pope was, I don't know, a reward in a certain sense for the suffering that they endured. And to have a pope as John Paul II was more than a reward. It was a celebration of the 1,000 years of Christianity in Poland that was so faithful to the church and so faithful to Christ. I think they deservedly are proud of that son of Poland, of what he did for the world and what he did for the nation of Poland.
And one more question here. I know there was already a Mass of celebration for John Paul, celebrated by Bishop Caggiano that day. Any other celebrations or observances?
We have a diocesan celebration on the 22nd Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock at the cathedral. I've invited the whole diocese there. It will be televised also. We wanted an opportunity as a diocese to recognize this great event and to pray for his canonization. That's part of the thing.
All right. Well, Bishop D'Orazio, we'll look forward to it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Stay with us. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, save the date. Is the world going to end on Saturday?
97% of the people, God will destroy.
Finally tonight, have you heard that tomorrow, Saturday, May 21st, is supposed to be the end of the world? That's right. If you haven't taken that trip to Paris or bought that Lamborghini just yet, your time is supposedly running very, very short. Buy it on credit. You won't have to pay it off, Well, the prophesier of the end days this time around is Harold Camping, an 89-year-old televangelist who owns a network of Christian radio stations known as Family Radio. His apocalyptic message has been plastered on billboards from Idaho to New York City and everywhere in between. And if you missed the billboards, perhaps you've run into one of his army of volunteers passing out flyers with the Doomsday message. But despite the intense media frenzy, Camping has failed to make a believer out of everyone, so perhaps heaven can wait? CNN's Jeannie Mose has more on the story.
I hate to be judgmental, but when you keep seeing Judgment Day this Saturday, the end of the world is almost here. It doesn't improve the daily commute. Here's what's supposed to happen around 6 p.m. Eastern Time Saturday.
The largest earthquake the world has ever seen is there's not going to be any banks, there's buildings will collapse, it's going to be quite awful.
Like the disaster movie 2012, arriving early. Earthquakes worldwide. Believers will experience rapture, heavenly ascent, while non-believers will stay for a few hellish months until the fiery end of times.
97% of the people God will destroy.
The generally low-key and polite folks who believe this need tough skin as they hand out their leaflets.
Judgment Day, yeah, right! It's all over, it's all over.
See you this time next year.
And you're convinced, you're absolutely convinced.
Yes, because the Bible guarantees it.
The Bible, as interpreted by this California preacher, Harold Camping, head of Family Radio. Lately, he's been getting some flack.
My Bible warns about false teachers, and buddy, you are one of the worst.
Camping miscalculated his last end times prediction for 1994.
What happens if on Sunday we're all still here and there's no earthquake and...
Well, there will be an earthquake.
This retired New York City transit engineer spent $140,000 for subway and bus shelter ads warning of Judgment Day.
That's your life savings.
A good chunk of it.
On Saturday, where will Robert Fitzpatrick be?
As of now, I'm planning to be in Times Square.
With media tagging along, expecting to see him with egg on his face or in rapture. And if those in heaven need someone to take care of the pets they leave behind, you can arrange with services like After the Rapture Pet Care and Eternal Earthbound Pets to have non-Christians take care of your animals. One non-believer wants to celebrate We're Still Here Day on the 22nd. For some of us, the 21st is problematic.
But this is my birthday. To put this on me is just weird.
So if my birthday is on the 21st, what do you recommend I do?
Pray.
And maybe celebrate early.
Happy Doomsday, dear Jeannie. Happy Doomsday to you. Hey!
Yeah, happy birthday to Jeannie Mose and happy Doomsday to everybody, I guess, maybe, something like that. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Hopefully not the last edition of the show. And well, as you know, this week we did a lot of reporting on the release of the John Jay study on clergy sexual abuse. Well, we could not have done this job without the help of the cooperation of so many people. We want to thank them and thank especially our sister news outlet, The Tablet, for their support and their insight. So remember to join us online this weekend. We're over at currentsny.net. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night, and hopefully we'll meet again on Monday.